It's 35.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're just thankful for this day. And Father, we're thankful for our country. And we just ask that you heal our country and just help us to show love to everyone and just reach out and help those in need. And also realize that we need to be good stewards of what you've entrusted with us in the environment and the many blessings you've given each one of us. And help us to realize that in our community that there's some people that are less fortunate. And let's always remember that. And just give us guidance, Father, as we do go about the work of the Joint Water and Sewer Commission, and help us be good stewards of the funds that the customers have provided us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's no one that signed up for public comment. So we'll proceed to the committee updates.
Excuse Commissioner Cook.
I'll make that motion to excuse Commissioner Cook.
I second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Commissioner Cook, we need to be thinking about him. He's recovering from some major surgery, and he should be back hopefully next month. We had the Facilities Committee meeting yesterday. And first off, I want to say I'm very impressed with our staff. But at that meeting, we approved for contract award to be presented to the full commission, some cleaning and televising of a lot of sewer lines in the areas in our system that have some old sewers. Also, a canal road water main installation was approved, and we discussed the contract award for the Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Plant engineering, and that's been deferred. We're trying to decide how we can expedite, get that work going, because prices are going up so fast, and we find a limited number of contractors, so we're just talking about different ways that we might want to proceed with that project. And then we approved for approval submittal to the full commission to splice 2016 North Mainland 3/4 main, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. Our project list for the potential bond issues was presented. It's $15 million. It's the same list that we had in the splice referendum that failed. On the water pollution control plant flows report, we had every plant was in compliance. I do want to say, though, that we had the tropical storm come through. We did have an awful lot of rain. A lot of water was at the Academy Creek plant and the other plants. But the good thing is that the Academy Creek plant handled it, and also the new pump station that's over by Sonic just kept pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping, and only one pump had to operate. So, and I just want to commend our staff for the design of that pump station and getting that going like they did. Then we had the capital project report. We get to see a lot of photos. A lot of projects are closing down now, are finishing up, or getting close to finishing up. So we just need to put more in the holster and get them going again. So we've got a lot of things coming up, a lot of needs, and we hope that we'll have good input from all the commissioners as we discuss some of those projects in the upcoming months. And then we discussed some potential land things in an executive session, but no action was taken on that. We did have a finance meeting after that, and Commissioner Duncan, can you give us an update for that, please?
Yes, I will, Chairman. Thank you. We also approved an item that's before the full commission today, and that's the North Mainland Phase 3/4 main project. And we also discussed the potential bond issue. It's project list. reviewed those in detail. And then on a discussion item, we had the monthly financial report. It sometimes gets kind of boring when we say that we're in good shape, but we are. While our sales were off for the year in terms of water and sewer service sales, other income exceeded the budget, which really positioned us quite well to finish the year positive. So I'm thankful that the staff demonstrated the agility necessary to make that happen, given an interesting year that we had with COVID. That completes my report, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll move to the approval section of the agenda. Number 1 is the minutes from the June 17, 2020 regular meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion we approve the minutes of the June 17 meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Second item is minutes from the June 17, 2021 executive session.
Motion to approve, sir.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
I'll abstain. I missed the executive session.
Okay, motion passes 5 to and 1 abstention. Pass that executive session minutes over this way. Next item is the resolution for intent to issue revenue bonds. We have representatives of Davenport here and the bond attorney, Mr. Fennell, so I'm not sure who's going to be making the presentation.
I'm John Fennell, representing y'all as bond counsel, and I'll start, but then hand it off to the money guy with Davenport. What we have today is an intent resolution. The purpose of it is really to authorize us to move forward on starting to prepare the documentation for up to $16 million in revenue bonds. It also authorizes the commission to reimburse itself from the bond issue. So in the event the commission starts spending funds on these new projects between now and when we can get a bond issue closed, you'll be allowed to reimburse yourselves for those expenditures out of the proceeds of the bond issue. So that's really the nuts and bolts of the intent resolution. It's really just to get us all engaged and get us started on the documentation. And then once we've got a transaction put together, we'll come back in front of the commission to have y'all formally approve a bond resolution that would then lock in the interest rate and all the final terms of the bond issue. So with that, I'll let Courtney maybe talk about the schedule and kind of next steps from there. But I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all may have on the legal side.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you again. Great to be here in person. As far as schedule goes, with this resolution, if you adopt it this afternoon, what we'll do is start setting up meetings with the rating agencies, as we've talked about in previous meetings with the committees, is that we are recommending doing this as a public sale. We're getting better rates than we would if we went out to the banks, and that's going to mean we're going to need a bond rating. And so we'll need to line up the bond rating agencies. Mr. Purnell and his group will be putting together a disclosure document called a preliminary official statement, which will have a lot of information about the workings of the authority and the service area. And so with those two with that document, as well as a credit presentation that we'll put together, which basically tells the story of the credit for the agencies, our goal is to try to get back to you guys at a meeting in the near future. Part of it's going to be the timing of getting in front of the rating agencies, because they are very stretched, as everyone is these days. Trying to get people to be able to get on their calendars has been tricky. So one of the things that that we talked about in some of the previous meetings, but for those who may not remember, is this debt, way we're looking at structuring it, would be to wrap it around existing debt, so that there's essentially not an increase needed from any existing revenues in your system, so that it basically will wrap around existing debt, and you'll be able to take these projects on without having to find additional dollars. So interest rates have held in there for us right now. They're staying low. Hopefully that will continue by the time we get to the marketplace. So happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Yes, sir.
What do you mean by wrap around? What down into?
Okay. Maybe easier to show you graphically. So if you see the dark green, that is your existing debt service. And you got, basically, this is 2022 and 23. There's a couple of issues that drop off. And when they drop off, we're basically going to have interest only during this period and maybe a little principal. And then we're going to backload the principal from some of the later years so that essentially you don't see a spike in debt service and come down.
Andrew, Commissioner Strickland was not here at the last meeting when we discussed that with them. Do we have a copy of that report that we could let him look at? And I'd like for you to just briefly summarize the projects that we're talking about, and then I want to just go more in depth as to the schedule of when the bonds would be available, when the funds would be available to us.
Okay, so the projects we're talking about were the projects that were listed for the SPOS vote. The first one listed was a cured-in-place pipe rehab for gravity sewers that are along both the mainland and the island. On the island, it'd be in neighborhoods along Frederica from Devonwood Estates to Glen Haven. Basically with that, and on the island and on the mainland along between Altama and 341. Basically, cured-in-place piping would allow us to rehab these existing sewers that need attention, that are going to be televised and inspected and rated according to the existing condition of them without having to dig up the streets. So that project is in there. There's money in there to rehab the Dunbar Creek facility, wastewater plant on St. Simon's Island. There's some need for some improvements to the aeration systems, which will improve our efficiency and treatment capacities there. Some odor control functions, and then improvements to the filters and UV system. The ARCO water and sewer extension and Community Road water and sewer extension extends service to 2 areas on the mainland that currently don't have full access to water and sewer service. The ARCO neighborhood is north of 5th Street and up to the Night Industrial Park, over to Whitlock and 341, if that kind of rectangle there. Community Road is the area along Community Road from Altama to Habersham. That commercial area there does not have access to sewer. Most of them do have water access, but they don't have access to sewer. On the water side, we would be looking at rehabbing some transite water mains in 4 neighborhoods on the mainland: Beverly Shores, Waverly Pines, Fairway Oaks, and College Park. Those have extensive break histories. We have data compared to the nationwide average on breaks, and these are up to 5 times the rate of breaks is what we would see nationwide. And then the last project would be an economic development project to put a new elevated storage tank, water storage tank at exit 42 for the economic development opportunities that are hopefully coming to our area in the very near future in that region.
The cost of those, estimated cost of those projects, $15 million.
Estimated cost is $15 million. Yes,
Bond issue is $16 million.
yes, sir. That's because of the capitalized debt, correct? Capitalized interest, sorry.
In order to not create that increase in debt service,
Right.
we're going to borrow a little more to pay interest for those 2 years to give us that 30-year money cost. That way you don't have to come out $5 in other areas.
Do all the commissioners understand that? Okay.
I got a question, sir, if you don't mind. So we're gonna make all these improvements, capital improvements, and we're phasing them in, I imagine, for over what period of time we're looking at?
Projects should all be done within 2.5 years. ARCO and Community Road will both be shovel ready before we can get actual bonds issued.
Right.
So those will be done quickly. The Dunbar Creek project we talked about yesterday at the Facilities Committee. We're looking for ways to expedite that. Again, as Commissioner Turnipseed said, so that one was probably about a 18-month to 2-year project by the time we get done. The transite replacement and the CIP projects, those will be done in-house engineering, so we can let those go with a very short amount of in-house engineering work. And then the elevated storage tank, it's pretty simple engineering. We'll have to get somebody to go out and do some geotechnical engineering for us and do some foundation, but the actual construction everything should be done within 2.5 years at the latest.
Also, Courtney, you said something about getting a bond rating. What's our bond rating now?
So we don't currently have a bond rating.
We do not?
Right, because the debt that we have is basically private placement. So Doug and Ronnie, you're going to put the rating on for AA3, which is the lower end of the AA rating. Right. So
we anticipate it getting better?
Our hope is to at least get that, but to push ahead for a higher one if we can. That's always our goal.
We've been fiscal responsible for all our debts that we've been incurring, and we're sitting on financially stable. So wouldn't you think our bond rating would be a little better?
That's our hope. Our hope is that we'll get it better. We don't want to make any promises, but part of our job is to tell the story, trying to encourage them to give us the rating. You've got the whole economy area is part of the story, your service area, if you would. You've had some great economic development going on, in spite of the pandemic over the last couple of years. So we want to tell that story and talk about the possibilities that are still coming, talk about the growth that's coming and things that are happening. So that's part of the story we have to tell them.
What's our existing debt service coverage, and what will it be with the new bond issue? Projected to be?
So with the way that we're structuring it, whatever your current debt service coverage is will continue as long as you're still producing net revenues equal to where you are today, because we're not increasing the debt service, right? Because the debt service, the idea is that the debt service will basically continue the same. And I don't have any did we? Awesome, thank you so much. So what? Let's see if we have this in here. I should know, but I don't. So for instance, debt service right now is slightly below $3 million. Our goal is to try to stay under that $3 million number so that it continues continues to be around the same. Do you have coverage? You know what coverage is at the top of your head? I'm sorry, Chairman, I don't have it at the top of my head, but the goal is to basically show how you compare to other similarly rated AA type credits and try to stay in that same realm as part of it. Also, days cash on hand is the other big thing that we want to show them, is how you've been able to manage your reserves.
Mr. Burrows, on our projects list, are we restricted once we place the bonds to use the bond funds for those, or can those be adjusted?
I'm going to defer that one to John. That's a legal question. It does specifically outline those projects in this resolution, so.
So those projects will need to be financed with the proceeds of the bonds. However, you do have some discretion to move monies between those projects. However, you can't identify those to the bond investors in the documents and then not accomplish them. So I think that project list, yes, does need to be identified by this board and authorized for us to move forward for these specific projects. Now, obviously, shifting funds between the projects all identified would be allowable, but you couldn't just abandon the water line that you've got kind of in your plan of finance.
So with that said, once this is bid, if it turns out to be more than this, we're committed to doing it?
Yeah, I mean, you would need to come up with the funds to.
In that case, I think we need to, make sure we got updated pricing. 'Cause, I mean, we just voted yesterday at finance, and I'm sure it's on here today, but to, make a change order just because the cost of pipe went up considerably.
Right. So you're saying that if we proceed with this, and these projects in there, we have to complete them even if we don't have the funds to complete them?
Well, I mean, you could certainly delay until funds were available. But again, I would not recommend that y'all move forward with this if you don't think you're going to have enough money to accomplish the projects. I mean, I would adjust.
Can we have more generic description of the projects instead of being so specific?
We can write the documents as however y'all like us to dictate them. Sure. I mean, we can certainly be more generic and a little more general if that's helpful for you and your staff.
I think it's important to point out that a couple of these projects, as we're calling projects, are really program work. Mm-hmm. And they're unitized or based on number of linear feet or miles. And the actual cost of the project would simply mean that instead of doing, I'll just use a number of 20,000 feet, if the pricing comes in remarkably different than we had budgeted, we might not do 20,000, we might do 15,000, but it's still aligned with the program that we've identified, and it is also aligned with the 20-year plan that we developed and approved
Sure,
recently.
and that's all allowable. No, I mean, you would be fine in
Right, so that, I think that's the kind of flexibility we've been talking about. Again, because two of these are significantly unitized projects, we would just execute at a lesser level if the pricing exceeds what we expect.
So if-
Yeah,
if
the advantage of water sewer improvements is exactly what you're saying. It's not like building
Right.
a new building where you're only going to build 3/4 of it.
Right, and the number, in the market that we're in now for supply chain, a number of the commodity suppliers won't quote anything more than a day, some a week long. So while we would endeavor to lock in pricing, if you will, until we write a check, we don't know what a lot of things are. And it's not unique to the water and sewer or utility industry at all. It's in the construction industry, very much so. I'm living that every day. So I think before we try to run off and say we got to have hard and fast numbers for each one of these, we should remember that they're unitized projects, and we just execute at a different level where the pricing is king, if you will.
And we can obviously work with the commission and the staff, especially in the offering document, to make sure the project description's adequate and not going to burden you with something that y'all can't accomplish.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe on that second paragraph, the main thing is the ARCO and the community road. I mean, obviously, we want to do those projects, but if we just say sewer extensions, 2 areas as determined by the commission, or something like that.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a legal question of our attorney, and maybe Mr. Burrows, can we have a really short recess that I might ask that question, or is that proper procedure? So I need just a minute to talk to you.
Have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
And I don't know if it meets the criteria for all of us to go in, is the reason I'm asking it in a public forum. Well, I mean, if the attorney says so, then yes, so, yeah. Yeah, if we could, and I apologize, but it's a question that I think could be pertinent.
All in favor of executive session?
Well, are we going to executive session or them two just open? No, let's just take a break.
Take a recess.
So we need to vote down the motion to go into session because it was already seconded.
Yeah, he rescinds the motion.
We're just going to take a break?
Ask for a short recess.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me that moment of clarification.
Okay, we'll be back in session right now. Now, let's talk about if we need to revise the scope of item 3 to read water and sewer extensions to unsewered areas in the county and the city.
We need to revise the resolution, you saying?
Yes.
Yeah, my concern is exactly what you just said. I mean, you know, based off what he said about once we kind of start these, you know, and then the reality is, I mean, I just think these are way too specific to commit ourselves to all these. We already had concerns about locking in money.
That's the only one that's really, well, yeah, and you could say a new elevated water storage tank. You don't have to say at exit 42.
Well, I think we got in here for other purposes. Does that a catch-all phrase for us as well?
If I may, I mean, this is just an intent resolution. I mean, this is not locking the commission in anything. That will not occur until y'all approve a bond resolution that at that time, you know, locks in a final principal amount, interest rate, repayment schedule. And so, you know, in the second paragraph, that's the project list that staff provided us.
Right.
I think it's pretty generic, but I mean, if there's something there that y'all like to tweak or know that's not going to be accomplished, you know, I think it's up to you whether or not that needs to be amended.
So you're saying this allows y'all to start some preliminary work, but ultimately
Right,
does
and
not.
again, this is an intent resolution.
But it doesn't commit us to anything.
It doesn't.
Theoretically, we walk away from this
I mean,
tomorrow.
I don't think anybody could file a lawsuit against you and say, well, you said you were going to do this and you didn't do it.
Right.
Not under the guise of this resolution.
I mean, this is simply, all we would have wasted at that point is some of your staff attorney time.
Right.
So the terms of this is really not hammered down yet, exactly.
Correct. This is just to start the process.
That's exactly right. You can make some changes. And you know, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's a project here you're unsure that you are going to do, you could pull it out and maybe add a little bit of a generic and other projects and add it back after the fact. Is that
Sure.
fair enough? These are just the ones you're saying you're going to do.
I mean, for example, I mean, if you know that the water storage tank at exit 42 is going to come out, I mean, that's pretty specifically identified, but these other, you know, projects or sewer projects to repair gravity sewers and rehabilitation to the Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Facility, water rehabilitation projects to water mains, water sewer extensions in the ARPO area. I mean, to me, that is pretty generic unless y'all just know for some reason some of this is just not feasible and not going to be accomplished.
And to Commissioner Duncan's point, some of those projects may or may not complete, maybe a hard term to basically say.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't use the term complete or incomplete. I would just say that all of these, with the exception of the storage tank, all of these others can have a variable scope. And depending on our needs at the time we begin and want to end execution, and also pricing and the volume or limits of the supply. So in my view, I think this gives us enough flexibility today to take and approve a motion of intent to move forward. And then if the commission feels that we need to have more specificity on this, that can be done, in my view, in the facilities committee and in the finance committee, and then we can work on those project descriptions sufficiently before we take action as a full commission in August, presumably being the first time that we will actually be available to approve a bond issuance.
Mr. Chairman, with that in mind, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution of the intent to issue revenue bonds.
I'll second.
Motion second. Any other questions?
So, go ahead, Mayor.
Question is, even though I know this is the intent to say that we would like to issue a bond at a later time, would those issues about repayment and early repayment penalties and all that stuff will be ironed out later? That's what we're saying, in a sense.
I see that being the case. We've had Commissioner, we've had the model presented to us, if we will, of what our payment schedule would be.
Right.
And if we need more engagement by this body to ferret out the fine details of it, in my view, that can be done at the next finance and facilities meetings.
My other question is, I know another SPLOST will be passed, will be presented in the next coming months or so. Will our projects be on that list? And then if we end up having this loan, how do we adjust that?
Mayor, what I would say is if we move forward next year, as has been discussed, with a potential another SPLOST, and this is passed and we fund these projects, we would offer a different set of projects for consideration for the SPLOST votes.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, from the master plan, we have a lot of projects. Right.
It sounds like there's some work to be done and questions to be answered. What's the rush in doing it today, and what's the risk of not doing it today? Other than the
Great question.
Other than the bond rate changing, but I mean, is there
Interest rates are the biggest risk at this point, and that's
projections that they're going to change in the near-term future?
hard to say. You know, it's with the news of the Delta variant, interest rates actually been coming down since we last talked, frankly, which is a good thing. Who knows when they go up? They typically go up faster than they come down. So, you know, that's a who knows. If I could, Chairman Termsey, to answer Mayor Harvey your question. So when we do a public sale, the typical call date is 10 years. And I think maybe what you're thinking is, could there be SPLOST money to pay the bonds off down the road? And the answer is yes. You'd have to put it in the question for the SPLOST question. It has to be identified as you know, your intent would be to use SPLOST money to pay off this issue. And it could be, but you'd have to wait to the 10th year to pay it off, which is very common when you do public sales. So that's not unusual. And can I answer the question of the particulars of, and maybe this will, if I could, the handout that I gave you just a moment ago, this is a very aggressive schedule that we could move along, but we will need everybody pulling in the same direction to get there. And that would be to get to your August 19th regular scheduled meeting and actually price the bonds that morning, bring the basically resolution for approval that afternoon. But at that point, we would have everything pretty much set in place in terms of the interest rates. It would be done on a 10-year call basis. And really, you're just signing off on the final projects at that point, as well as the final particulars of the bond sale on that day.
And if I recall correctly, we looked at rates and payback rates last month, right? And with scenarios.
Yes, we did.
And at the cost of money at this point in time,
That's right.
It seems to make sense to explore it, to move forward, to me.
My concern is just I understand we've got some opportunities to change some language and make them more vague, and to Commissioner Duncan's point, some of these are unitizable, but some of them are pretty specific to the areas. So, I certainly wouldn't want to mislead anybody by, having to make some of these areas. I mean, I think 2.5 million or 3.5 million was two of the numbers, and I don't remember what for the expansions. And what I'd hate to do is commit those expansions, then find out they're 8 million piece, and then we have to commit all of this to it, and the unitization is effectively a unit of zero. That's my concern. It sounds like the risk of answering those is the risk of
We can change the number, but we need to know that before we go to the bond sale, which would be looking at the schedule roughly the week of August 9th. We'd need to know what kind of the final number
I'm not
is.
sure we want to change the number. I think we might just want to change the scope a little bit.
Scope could be changed literally up to that, I guess, that afternoon, changing that resolution on the 19th, assuming the schedule we were working upon. And I'll go back to case 2B, which is the case that I gave Commissioner Strickland the pages to, which is the chart that I showed you dropping off, assumed roughly a 20-year final maturity. And the interest rate at the time we were talking about it was 2.1% in terms of interest rates. And knock on wood, it should be a little bit better if we went today, but rates could go up between now and then.
Andrew, don't we have updated engineering cost estimates for the construction of Arco and Community Road?
They're a couple months old, but we've got some recent numbers, yes, sir.
Why don't we look at that and see if we need to just modify that? And then on the elevated tank, we just don't need to say at exit 42.
Okay.
That's specific.
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, I'm not against this, but I just don't feel like we're ready. But
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call a question.
Is there a motion second? All in favor? Motion carries 4-4. All against? 4-4, 2 against, so motion carries.
Ask if I could, Mayor Harvey, to answer your question, coverage in 2020 was 4.1 times, which is very strong. That's with connection fees. Without it was a 3.72. So good numbers.
Thank you. Next item is a contract award priority basin cleaning and CCTV. Mr. Burris?
Yes, sir. We, as part of the FY22 capital projects plan, we had a project to clean and televise 71,000 linear feet of pipe. These basins were selected based off their priority rankings in the master plan that was presented earlier this year. We went out for bid and received 3 bids for this project. The low bid was Southeast Pipe Survey at a total bid price of $272,250.15. Total approved funding in the capital projects plan is $425,000. This is a contract time of 240 days. We have extensive work history with Southeast Pipe Survey, so we're familiar with their work and comfortable with them. I would point out that on the bid tab that is attached, line items 9 through 20 are as needed line items. Now, we are using 71,000 linear feet of pipe here, so in all likelihood, the majority of these line items will be used. So there is a likelihood that the price will come in slightly higher at final contract time than the $272,250.15. But project management will have to make the call on whether or not to proceed with any of the as-needed items. I do not in any way believe that the increased amount will get us anywhere close to the $425,000 budget. But do want to point that out. As we come to a section that has a root in it that we need to get cut out of the way, then they would use that root cut line item to go in there and do that. But since these lines have not been televised, there's no way to specify how many line items or how many units are needed for root cut at this time.
Can you tell the commission where these are located, where these lines are going to be?
Yes, sir. These basins that we're looking at here are actually the basins we were just talking about for the CIPP work. This is basins along on St. Simons in the neighborhoods along Frederica, from Devonwood Estates up to Glen Haven. Not the main line down Frederica, but the smaller lines on the neighborhoods, and on the mainland it would be in the 4WTP, 4035, and 4021 basins. 4021 is the station in front of Sonic. 4035 is the basin that the pump station that's on Ross Road right there in front of GP, and then 4WTP is actually the basin that drains directly to Academy Creek. So that kind of gives you the general area on the mainland we would be inspecting.
It goes all the way up.
It goes all the way up past Target that drains down in there. So,
all right. Both the Finance and the Facilities Committee approve this for submittal to the full commission. Do I have a motion? Motion?
Second.
Motion and second. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir. Sorry about asking these questions, but Mr. Burrows, have we dealt with Gulf Coast Underground before?
we have done one project with Gulf Coast Underground. They did a CIPP project for us in the Brockington neighborhood on St. Simons.
Why is they about 3 times more than seem to be out of?
One thing I will say is they are out of Mobile, the Mobile area, so there would be some travel and putting people up for 240-day cost associated with this. Southeast Pipe Survey is out of Patterson, so they can go sleep in their own beds every night.
Rockington project, it was a real short project.
It was a short-term project. It was about a one-week project, so they were competitive on pricing for that. It's a little harder for them to compete on these longer-term projects.
Additionally, their unit cost is significantly higher.
Right.
And you've got one unit per thing covered, so I mean, assuming there's going to be way more than one unit each,
It's going to get significantly higher even than that.
the curves are going to continue to
Right,
digress.
absolutely.
Or whatever.
Thanks.
Other questions?
So the budget's 425 still, and we're just going to,
You're-
and we feel like within those unit cost lines 9 through 20, which you got one unit per each.
Right.
That we're going to,
We will be significantly under 425 at the end of the project.
There are no other questions. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Next item is the contract award, Canal Road Water Main Installation. Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. We have the Canal Road to Glencoe Parkway Water Main Extension. It's a looping project that will connect the existing water mains on Glencoe Parkway to the water main on Canal, in front of Canal Crossing. This is actually being done in what is essentially 3 phases. We've awarded a contract to TB Landmark Construction to install the water main down Canal Road as part, in conjunction, not as part of, in conjunction with the SPLOST project to install the force main. It's not being paid for with SPLOST funds. Staff is self-installing the open cut sections of water main installation along Glencoe Parkway. This contract would be to do horizontal directional drill of 600 feet that goes underneath the back entrance to FLETC, both the back gate and the commercial gate. Given the amount of traffic that comes in and out of there, we believed it would be best to move forward with that. This will be in a casing which will allow us to, if anything were to happen, replace that pipe without having to re-drill it. So that is what this will do. There's $651,610 remaining in the project budget, including all current encumbrances. The low bid was TB Landmark Construction. We recommend option 1, which is to go with a 20-inch casing instead of a 24-inch casing. The low bid was $206,890.
This was also approved by both the Facilities and Finance Committees. Do I have a motion?
Chairman, I'll make the motion that Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve the award of the contract for Canal Road to Glencoe Parkway Water Main Extension to TB Landmark Construction Incorporated in the amount of $206,890.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any questions? This is the same contractor that's doing the North Mainland SPLOST project that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. Basically what this does, it'll allow us to not have to open cut the entrance to FLETC, the north entrance, and if we have a water leak or something like that. So it's just a necessary project. Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. The next item is the contract award Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Rehab Engineering. Andrew, you want to discuss that?
Yes, sir. This was deferred yesterday at the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting. We're looking at ways to potentially expedite the project instead of the traditional delivery method. So the request would be to defer this as well, pending approval at a Facilities and Finance Committee meeting at a later date.
I'll move to defer item 6 until the August commission meeting.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions?
how does this relate to the project that's
It would be the engineering for that work that would be on the potential, the bond issuance. So, again, we're trying to find a way to expedite that at this time. We have preliminary cost estimates on Dunbar Creek. We just want to, it's more about the time period it's going to take to get it done.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Next item is change order number 1, SPLOST 2016 North Mainland Phase 3 Force Main.
Yes, sir. Our contractor on the North Mainland SPLOST project, for your To refresh your memories, this is to install a force main from pump station 4110 on Harry Driggers Boulevard to an existing force main connection location in front of Canal Crossing. There's also in the contract included gravity improvements on Ogden Drive. The current total contract award amount was $4.66 million. Notice to proceed date was April 1st with a contract duration of 330 days. Since the bid date in late January, there has been significant supply chain disruption both in the PVC and HDPE pipe supply chains. TB Landmark was able to order the necessary PVC pipe at that time and get that price locked in. However, their delivery times have been extended. If you've been down Canal and Harry Driggers recently, you'll have seen a lot of HDPE pipe, but not as much PVC pipe because we're still waiting on the smaller diameter PVC pipe to show up. Then HDPE pipe, when they went to order, their suppliers refused to hold the price on that. The suppliers are declaring force majeure due to resin shortages in the market. TB Landmark has requested this change order due to the increased piping cost for the HDPE pipe. They did get the pipe here, and they have procured it all. However, they did incur a pretty substantial cost increase. So the cost increase is $168,801.82, which was due to the HDPE piping. The requested time delay on the project is 110 calendar days. That's due to the PVC pipe not being on the ground yet. So two issues, both being wrapped up into one here. The contractor has stated that this price increase only is from the supplier and does not include any overhead or profit. And then if the contract time is extended, it will be to 440 calendar days from that April 1st notice to proceed date, which would put completion June 15th of 2022. Thomas & Hutton, the engineer of record contracted by Joint Water and Sewer Commission, has reviewed and finds this acceptable as the items were outside of the control of the contractor.
Did all this happen after the pre-construction conference?
They began notifying us at the pre-construction conference that this was going on, yes. And at that time, they went ahead and locked in the price for the PVC, and when they went back to order the HDPE that same day, the supplier told them that price was no good anymore.
This was approved by both the Facilities and Finance Committees. Do I have a motion? Motion second. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. We'll move to the discussion section. Do we have anything for discussion?
Not at this time, sir.
Executive Director's update.
Yes, sir. We had a few staff members attended the Georgia Association of Water Professionals Conference in Savannah this week. Got to see some new technologies, listen to some project updates that some of our partner utilities are going through right now. I think it was a good experience for staff. Some staff members that hadn't previously been to that event were able to attend, and it's always good to be around other utilities and see what progresses they are making and how we make and incorporate those at our utility. The other thing I was going to say, and you brought this up earlier, I was just going to thank the staff members that worked through the Tropical Storm Elsa event for their efforts a couple of weeks ago. We had several staff members in the wastewater collections and the sewer treatment plants that stayed most of the night that night dealing with the rainfall that we received, but they did a great job. Appreciate their effort at that time, and we had a couple of members that were at the EOC during their activation. These guys come in, they do their jobs, and they don't complain about it even when it's raining 7 inches in 3 hours. So we'd like to thank the staff for their effort in that event.
I want to just commend the staff again on my update. I'm really impressed with the staff that we have. The sonic pump station, like I said, during that heavy rainfall, it just kept pumping and pumping and pumping. If you're driven by the sonic pump station, the staff is looking at solving problems that are above and beyond. At most pump stations, we have hydrogen sulfide at some of these pump stations. And a lot of times it will come up through the conduit and eat the motor control center or the control panel or something like that. Well, our staff has come up with a way to put an air gap there. I said, maybe we need to patent it, but I mean, it's a great idea. I mean, nobody asked them to do that. They came up on it on their own volition. And then we have I've learned that we have some staff members that are so cross-trained. We have a shortage, some of the operators at Southport have had health issues. And so one individual's on our staff, who is a Class 1 operator, has been taken over for them. So we have good transitions there. And then we got Derek back in the back. His crew has been replacing all of those galvanized water lines that we got in the system. And we're finding out that some of the meters, we didn't even know where the meters were. I mean, they can't even find the meters. So we're having to find those meters for the meter people so they can change them out. And then there's certain things we're finding out within the meter installation that are some other problems that we need to address. But they're just hopping on them right away to keep these projects going. So I'm just very pleased that I have an opportunity to meet these people and see how hard they work. And let me just say, they all have a real good passion for this. And the ones I saw at that conference in Savannah, I mean, they sat and they listened to those talks and they learned something, but they like the jobs. And this is the way it is at the plants, in the water distribution system, and systems pumping. And I want to say that this all goes back to some extent and to a large extent to Andrew Burrs, Todd Klein, and Ms. Roberts. They've got a good group of people working there, and it's going really smooth. And I appreciate what they do, and they're making our job look a lot easier. I'll tell you that. So I just want to commend them publicly. Do any other commissioners have any comments?
How could we top that? So,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Leadership, and we got the best come here. All good employees.
Yeah, I like hearing Mayor Harvey say that when we get to increase certifications and everything. We don't need an executive session, do we?
Property.
We do need an executive session. Do I have a motion to go in executive session?
So moved.
Motion second. All in favor? We adjourn.
I'll move, we come out of executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Returning from executive.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very